4K.
Wow. Should have put more makeup on.
Yeah.
You look great.
All right. So you did you grow up in Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Born and raised.
Born and raised in Ann Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because my family's from Elyria, Ohio, which is not, I don't think it's too far from where Ann Arbor is. Are you close, like Sandusky? Because Ann Arbor is kind of closer to the Ohio side, right?
Yes, it's very close. Toledo was like right across the border. Sandusky was legendary because that's where Cedar Point
Yes,
is,
I know.
and that was like the mecca when you're in middle school. Because I think for like 8th grade science class, you would go for some like I don't know what they do. I think it was probably just to get the kids out of school for the day.
But like a field trip.
Yeah, and you were supposed
Measure
to
the
like
velocity.
some shit like that. But it was like everyone was just like, I don't care, and like no one actually did anything. They just went on all the rides.
All the rides. Yeah. Our 11-year-old went on the Magnum when we took him out there.
Yeah, I was a gigantic pussy and scared of heights, and I went on. What's the one? I went on Millennium Falcon.
Oh, that's
which was
a great one. Yeah.
It was not that great for me. It was like it was purely peer pressure, and like my friends would just make fun of me if I didn't. I had no desire to go on it. But
That's fun. Well, the first time I went on the Magnum when I was a kid, my dad had to bribe me.
Yeah.
He's like, I think he gave me like $5, and he's like, if you do this,
Yeah, I think the Magnum was like the warm-up. That used to be the biggest, and then they did Millennium Falcon, and then they've had like 9 bigger ones since.
Yeah, there's a bunch of huge
I'm just like, no,
ones
thank you.
Yeah, that's how I am now. I used to be like a junkie for that stuff, and
Really? I've just been like, I grit my teeth to just get it over with.
Yeah. Okay, so you grew up in Ann Arbor, and how did you start getting into music?
So I was classically trained in piano.
Wow.
My sort of funny story, when I was like an infant, I was the second kid, so my mom was kind of over the whole babies crying thing at that point.
Yeah.
And so she figured out her hack was that she like would try Disney movies, but then apparently I was really into Fantasia. So she would just, whenever I was crying or being annoying, she'd like just put the VHS in and like sit me in front of the TV, and I would just, I guess I watched Fantasia like hundreds of times when I was a kid. So I guess I wonder if that's where it started. But
Definitely.
but yeah, then I played piano when I was a kid, classically trained through high school basically. But in middle school, I picked up guitar and sort of taught myself, and started writing songs. And I have a theory: the reason why all musicians start is because they had their heart broken at some point in middle school, and so I had a crush, and then she broke my heart, obviously, and I was like, well, maybe if I become a rock star, then she'll like me.
Yeah.
And so that's and that's sort of how I got into starting to play and learn to write my own songs, and then from there it kind of just evolved on its own, and I was doing the band thing and playing open mics.
And that was in Michigan?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of spots for you to play?
No, like literally 0. There's one music venue. I don't even know if I even felt confident enough to go to that one, but it was like I was doing it at like restaurants and bars.
Oh, okay.
And it was a whole thing. So
would you call them and be like, hey,
it was more like one of our neighbors owned the restaurant, and they let me set up with a microphone.
Nice.
That's really cool.
And you started playing guitar in middle school, and kind of after the whole breakup situation happened. That's
it wasn't even a break. It wasn't even a breakup. I wasn't even close. But no, it was just started playing guitar, started writing songs, and I sort of fell in love with that, and that sort of became my new thing. And I fell in love with the music for the sake of it, and started writing and like learning how to play. And in college, I interned at a studio and was like learning the recording stuff, and I was doing the open mics in college as well, and I was that guy like dragging his friends out, and like when they obviously just wanted to go drink at the bar or like at someone's house or something. So it was like whenever I have a bad show now, I'm like, it doesn't hurt me because there's literally nothing more soul crushing than playing open mics when no one cares. It's like I've already been through the worst possible scenario, so like nothing, like anything now is great.
Yeah.
So.
That's really cool. And so I am part Asian. So I'm just curious. So my Chinese family is Chia. My parents told me. I was like, what?
You might have to explain that to me. Say more.
Yeah. So I'm Filipino, Chinese, Scottish, Irish, German, Welsh.
You just need to say 2
Austrian.
or 3.
But yeah. All that. So
Very cool.
But I was raised like Filipino.
You're like 2019 in a nutshell.
Yeah, right?
Yep, that's where it's at.
I love it.
But I was just curious. I was like, when we saw that you're from Michigan, like, is there an Asian community out there?
Yeah, my parents moved from Taiwan. They both were involved with the University of Michigan, so there's actually a decent Chinese and Taiwanese American community there, and so just involved with the university. So I had to go to like Chinese school until I was like in middle school, and I obviously hated it because I was a bratty little kid. But yeah, so there's a decent amount actually.
That's cool. Yeah, because it's pretty intense, right? You have to go to school on like Saturday.
It was Friday night, and that's why I was like, Mom, I refuse. I will not.
I will not.
Oh. But that's cool. You were able to play piano were you like 4 when you started?
Something like that. I think it was like 5 or 6. And it was, again, it was when I first started, I was, this will be a common theme, but bratty little kid. And I was like, I don't want to. But then my mom was like, yo, just finish the first year. If you still don't like it, then you can quit, but you're not just like, you barely start. And I was like, okay, fine. And then Mom knowing best, after a year, I started being able to play stuff that like I actually liked and was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. And then so that's sort of, she got me to do it long enough until I got hooked. So.
So you still play piano to this day? Do you use it to write?
I do. I start a lot of songs on piano. That's sort of, it's important to me for when I write that the song kind of exists outside of the computer, that, I can play it on piano, I can play it on guitar, and it still works as a song. And that's like a really important part to my process. So I actually bought like an upright piano for my birthday for myself as a birthday present to myself a few years ago, and it's been like, it's amazing. It's very inspiring, and that's where a lot of it starts.
Yeah.
So I don't really, it's weird because, I'm growing up, I was classically trained, and I was like reading sheet music and doing all that, and I can't play a single thing that like a single classical piece anymore because I just don't practice, right? But then it's like I like know bits and pieces of different things, but I couldn't just sit down and play anything. But I really look at it as more of like a songwriting tool now. So it's like, I think much more in terms of like chords and like and how I write rather than just like playing some piece that I actually just don't remember because I don't practice enough. So
do you use that as influences in your songs, like just knowing that all the classical pieces of?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all in there somewhere. I'm not like consciously being like, what would Mozart do here?
Yeah, right. But
it's.
Well, what artists inspired you early on?
My favorite classical artists were probably like Chopin and Rachmaninoff, like the really dramatic, emotional stuff. But then. By that age, I was like really into like Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I was a big John Mayer fan. He was my idol, sort of like pop alternative bands like Matchbox 20 and Third Eye Blind and things like that. And then as I got older, I sort of I started getting into more of the indie stuff, like Passion Pit, Mike Snow, and that sort of led me down the road to the more electronic stuff. So
when did you start writing electronic music then? So you started out in middle school, you were playing acoustic guitar and singing. And did you continue doing that through high school? Were you in bands in high school?
Not in high school. In college, I was in a couple bands, and I was writing and trying to do the sort of indie rock thing.
So this is before you started DJing?
Yeah, I didn't start DJing until after college. I didn't know how to DJ until really even after I was a producer first. So the electronic thing kind of I started it as kind of just a fun thing. It was kind of a new world, and I was like, I had just heard like a Skrillex song, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
What is going on? And I was like, I'm like pretty good at piano. I'll just like download the program and figure this shit out and like watch a couple of YouTube videos, and then 8 hours later, I was like, I still have no idea what's going on. And I mean, like 8 years later, I still kind of don't know what's going on. So, but that's, that sort of started on just like this is a fun thing that I never intended. I never like downloaded the program thinking like, I'm going to be a DJ.
Oh, okay.
But then I just started producing.
Yeah. How did you get into producing?
It was just sort of like the next fun thing in music for me. I was doing a bunch of remixes, and then all that was people were into that more than any of the stuff I was singing and the acoustic stuff. And so, I just really fell in love with that whole process and that art. And then one thing led to another, and that just kind of became that's when Elephante started.
Okay. So that's crazy. So but you were going to college for a totally different thing, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's weird because when I was a kid, I loved music. I loved writing music. I loved making music, but it was never like a real job. It wasn't a thing that people did, especially being Asian. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go be a musician. It's like it wasn't even the realm of possibility. It was just that's not what people do. And so all the music that I did, it was just because I really liked doing it. And I guess, I think subconsciously I probably harbored some secret dreams of being a rock star.
Yeah.
Like all kids do. But I was never like, this is actually going to happen. And so everything I did in music was just because I just really loved doing it. And like looking back, I'm like, how the fuck did I do all of that shit? Like stuff sounds so painful now. Why would you put yourself through that? Like why? But it was the only thing I knew. I just did it because I loved it. And I actually had a job after college for a year and a half. And I was like, well, I guess it's time to like be a real person. And I was just so unhappy, and I told him, I got to the point where I was like, if I don't give the music thing a shot, like I will never forgive myself. I'm going to wake up when I'm 40 and I'm going to hate myself. So I was like, well, like, I guess we're just going to go for it. And so I quit my job and started doing the music thing full time. And in retrospect, it was like wildly irresponsible and like super naive. But I think you need a little bit of that, because anyone making it music is it takes so much luck and so much, hard work. And if you told me what all the things that would have to go right for me and all the things I would have to do just to like have a career, just to like be able to pay the bills, I'd be like, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way all of this is gonna, like, I have to do all of this in a year and I'm still going to be broke? Like, no fucking chance. So it's just like, I think you need that sort of childlike, almost like arrogance, or that where you're like, no, I don't care what the odds are. Like, I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
So,
do you remember the moment that caused you to be like, you know what, I'm going to go into work today and I'm done with this? Was there like a specific moment, or it was just kind of like a build-up?
It was a build-up. I don't know. I mean, it was just the work was so soul-crushing, and I was just so unhappy every minute I was there. It got pretty bad where I like literally installed Ableton, which is the music software, on my work computer. Which, like, I mean, at that point I was like, this is ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
No, it was one of those things where I finally got to the point where I was like, are you serious about this? Because this is what you want to do, but you're too scared to like actually go for it. And so are you ready to actually commit and actually go for it? And at a certain point, I was like, it got to the point where it wasn't a decision anymore. I was like, either I'm going to quit and try music, or I'm going to go insane. So,
That's great.
So once you decided to go, you're going to do the music, how did you then like break into DJing? How'd you start getting gigs, and like what was the first step that you made?
So my best friend from college was managing me at the time. He had another job, but he was just like doing it just like because he was the homie.
And he just liked what you were doing musically too?
I don't know if he really even liked what I was doing. I think he was just like a really good friend. Like the music wasn't very good, but he was like, nah, man, we're going to make you a star. And I was like, all right, thanks, Doug. But you know, he begged my way into like a couple clubs and stuff, but that wasn't like a real, I mean, it's what you think you should do when you're starting off, but that's not like a real path to having a career. But I was always more of a producer, and so I was working on the remixes, and things started to get a little bit of traction online, and I had a lot of support from college kids. So like I got pretty big on like the college blogosphere, and so like all those, and like Hype Machine, and so those places where, you know, I started getting a little bit of traction online, and then some frats started booking me, started playing some college shows, and then I signed with my agency, and then by that point that was like a little bit down the line, and I was working on original music, and you know, I'd sort of progressed past just the remixes.
Okay. And how did you get in? What getting the traction online from your remixes? What did you just choose songs that you liked, and how did that all kind of happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was when I started. It was kind of it was a really weird time in music where this is like you know, iTunes was like, that was sort of the thing, but then this is when like streaming was happening, so all of a sudden SoundCloud is now a thing, and the music industry doesn't really know what's going on, and so like it was the Wild West. It's just like what acapellas can you find online, and then just like, there's a new Katy Perry song, like I'm just gonna remix it and put it on the internet and see what happens. And it was like it was a combination of like what you could get away with and like what you liked.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you know, it was like, I remember my friend had gotten the stems to like the Clean Bandit Rather Be song. He's like, yo, dude, you should remix this. And it was like, you know, I was like, yes, this is like, you know, no one has access to this. I'm just going to do it. And like, so yeah, it was a combination of like things I liked, but also just like what I could do. Yeah, it was just like, it's a shame now because for me, and like I think really most of the young artists who are doing well right now, we all kind of came up in that environment of the SoundCloud days where it was like, you know, just find some kind of popular song and remix it, and you know, put your stamp on it and build your fan base. And you know, we all kind of came up at the same time, you know, like, you know, Griffin and Millennium and Louis the Child and Slander and Nightmare and like all of the like young American kids. That's all how we all started that way. And then by like 2014, 2015, the music industry had kind of like caught on. Spotify was becoming a thing, and they shut off the faucet. They like anytime you tried to put like an illegal remix up, it would just get taken down.
Yeah.
And it was like, so yeah, it was just like there's a moment where like the whole world, like, you know, you could do whatever. And so I was lucky to be doing that thing at that time.
So when you put the songs up on SoundCloud, and you were just getting a bunch of streams, and your numbers were going up.
Yeah,
and
that's like sort of the thing. I don't know how it happened. It just kind of does.
Okay.
You know, there's certain things you can do. You can send it out to blogs. You can try to get it on Hype Machine. But like at the end of the day, it's like, are people going to listen to it? Are people going to share it with their friends? Are you going to get the sort of organic support? And I don't know how that happens. It it either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can do for that.
So that kind of got your name out there then.
Yeah,
doing the remixes.
Yep, that was what sort of got the attention of my agent, got the attention of college kids and people who wanted to book me. But then it wasn't really until I started making my own original music that things really sort of
started to take off.
Yeah, because again, like those were the Wild West. There were every day there's some new young producer DJ getting millions of hits on some remix or whatever. And so it was like, how do you really differentiate yourself? How do you become like a real artist and not just like some kid with a laptop, right? And that was sort of the thing that kind of took me a few years to figure out, where it's not just like putting the song up and like hope people listen to it. You have to develop, social media. You have to, get your artwork, your branding, like your whole aesthetic, your cover art. Like how do you turn this into like a real thing, not just like a SoundCloud song? Like how do you create something that people love, and like how are you, like you don't have to be everyone's favorite artist, but you have to be someone's favorite artist, and it's just like, it's that's a process that I think takes a long time, particularly because I was independent, right? If you're working, if you're at a label, sometimes they have resources to help you out with that, and they you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you have to meet these people. But yeah, it's just there's like so much to being an artist that's more than just being like putting music out, and so it was. I was lucky that I think I had to have that like 2 or 3 year incubation period where I was, I was making music, I was figuring out the craft, but I was also figuring out how to like be an artist and like, make it a real project.
Was that after you quit your job?
Yes. Yeah. So I think I quit in 2013, and then I didn't, like, looking back, I don't think I wasn't like a real artist until probably like end of 2016, 2017, where, things started to come together.
Yeah. So how did you then get hooked up with your management? Did they contact you through SoundCloud, or how did that process kind of come together for you?
So my manager is actually a friend of mine from college, not the same one.
Oh, okay.
So my best friend in college, he was helping me out, but he had a full-time job, and so at a certain point, I kind of reconnected with this other friend who's also working in music, and we were talking, and he at a certain point was like, "Yo, I think you really have something here," and like we talked about it, and my best friend at the time was like full-time somewhere else. I was like, "Yo, man, like I appreciate it, but I think I'm," and he, like, that's what he wanted. Like he was, but and I mean he had done some like live music production, and he was writing in music, but like we had no industry connections, we didn't know anyone, and so starting from the beginning, it was like a very, we were kind of in it together, starting from the same place, and we were both just like trying to figure it out. So, but yeah, I was very lucky to get hooked up with him, and it was just like one of those like fortuitous, like one of those things you have to get lucky with, like find people who believe in you and find people who will grow with you, and it's that was like, total chance that we kind of connected.
Yeah, and then you started writing stuff, and you put out your first EP, and that was with a label?
No, that was independently. So my first EP is called I Am The Elephante, and it came out in 2016? 2016. Yes, 2016. Yes. Time is a flat circle. I can't remember. But so 2015, I was doing the remixing, and my manager and and I at the time were like, "Look, I think we need to put out something serious, right?" Because I think all of the artists that I looked up to that point, and now really even at some point, they put out like a really serious piece of work, right? Like Skrillex, Porter Robinson, Avicii, like they all put out like albums. They put out like serious, like they weren't just like doing remixes. Like sure, that's maybe how they started, but at some point they did something really real. And even at that point, and even it's like this now, but people are like, oh, it's all about the singles. And it's like, I actually think that's not what it's about. Like, yes, singles are important, but you don't become someone's favorite artist with singles
off one song.
Yeah, like no one's ever been like, that's my favorite artist. There's this one song I
like that one song. Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not going to pay to go see.
They're not going to go pay to see you.
One song.
Exactly, but like that one song can be a gateway to the rest of your. They'll be like, oh, I really like this song. Like, let me go listen. Oh, they have an album out. Let me go check that out. And they're like, wow, they're like 5 or 6 songs I really love. Like, I want to go see them live. And then they go see you. They're like, oh my God, that show's great. Then they tell your friends, right? And like, but you, without having that body of work for people to go to after they hear the song, then no, like it just stops there. And so, I had, so I worked on the first EP and I put it out in 2016. We did it independently, which is, testament to my team. And, we were, again, like looking back, we knew nothing, but we were lucky and did some things right. And it's just had such like an incredible organic growth and life to it. And it's like some of the songs now have more plays per week than they did when I put it out, which is just like fucking nuts. But, yeah, I think there's some songs on it I kind of wish I could take back, but that happens. And I went on tour for that, and that's when things on the touring end started to pick up. And and then started playing some festivals. I think that EP was really sort of the launch of where the music really started connecting with people.
Yeah.
And then so naturally, after like a year after that, of touring and doing that whole thing, we were like, well, let's just do that again. And so I spent the next like 18 months working on Glass Mansion, my second EP, which came out last summer.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the sort of next like level up. And we that's when we did our first like hard ticket tour, like our real live show, not like live show, but like our first production show where we're bringing out the stage, we're bringing out the screens. We work with some amazing visual artists to do visuals. We're bringing a VJ out to do the live stuff, working with a lighting team, and like really like, because up to that point it was all just like going to festivals or playing in clubs, right, where everything's already there.
And you just toured around and played different clubs.
And then so last fall we did our first like really serious
like major headlining type.
Yeah, like this is like our vision. This is my show. This is like it's like we're bringing everything and we're making it a really unique experience. So, and then that was terrifying.
I was gonna ask.
Super fucking scary. And super fucking expensive.
That's what I was gonna ask. How'd you fund it?
The touring had been going well, right? So, and that's the nice thing about playing clubs and festivals is you don't really have that many expenses, but to do your own show, it's like so fucking expensive, and which is why a lot of DJs don't want to do it. But it was like, I think this is something that's important for us to do. And so we did it, and it was like, we sold out all the shows, which was like fucking nutty.
Was it across the U.S.?
Yeah, it was, we did New York, L.A., San Francisco, Chicago, and Texas.
Yeah, the major markets.
San Marcos. And it was like... Yeah, it was like a real thing, and we're doing clubs and stuff as well. But like those were the, like we sold out Irving Plaza in New York, which was like, fucking legendary.
Yeah,
and it was such a surreal thing, and kind of to bring it full circle, I had started to sing again on my stuff after all these years, and so I started singing live again at the show, and that was also fucking terrifying because I had never sang in front of that many people. So, but that was a really inspiring and sort of fulfilling aspect to that. And so yeah, and I think it was another thing that helped kind of differentiate me. And then, so we've been doing that show for the last year or 6 months, I guess. Gee, it's only been 6 months. That's crazy. But yeah, and then so now I'm just doing like festivals and my Vegas residency this summer, and we're working on the next tour for this fall. So.
Wow, exciting.
Who's your residency through?
I'm at Wynn, so I'm playing at Encore Beach Club.
Nice.
That's so cool.
Yes, the place is awesome.
Yeah.
For that,
their food is good too.
Oh my God, the food at the Wynn is so fucking good.
Yes.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm. I'm all about food and buffets. Like, don't worry.
They have a very generous food and beverage credit, so
Nice.
definitely take advantage of that.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's a dream. That's so cool. So at what point did you get signed to a label? Was that after you put out the second?
So no, I've never signed a label.
Yeah.
I'm totally independent. You know, we were able to have success doing the first one independently, and we, you know, built some relationships with people that, you know, different aspects of putting music out. Like, you know, we worked with a distributor and a radio promoter and all the sort of different pieces. And, you know, we talked to some labels, but the label thing was, to me, it was a little scary because I just had heard so many horror stories from my friends.
Yeah.
Like guys who were really, really talented, had a lot of traction, were doing well, and they're young and they're dumb. And labels are like, "Hey, sign this deal," and they're like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm gonna sign to a label." Like, fuck yeah, I got getting an advance. Like, yeah, I'm fucking made it. And then, they put out a song, it doesn't do well, and the label shelves them, and it's like, well, you can try again in 6 months, and it's like, no, like I want to, like, no. And then, you know, I have friends who have made in full albums, send it to the label, and they're like, yeah, we don't like this, and they got to start over, and it's fucking insane. And so we felt confident from the first EP that we could do most of it, and we could do it ourselves, and having the sort of control and the creative control is really important to me. So we did the second EP independent as well. So
when you booked that first tour for that EP, you said that was your first tour after the first EP came out?
I had been,
aside from the college.
Yeah, I'd been touring.
Stuff.
I'd been playing shows here and there, but that was like the first like proper, like, we're going on a run, and these dates are like, here's the aesthetic for it. Here's the, you know, this is the thing. So.
Was that pretty intimidating to get into that, or were you like, how was that different from just going to play? You knew, okay, and now I'm going to play like 20 dates in a row. Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the thing is I personally always operate on a very like blinders short term, like, what am I doing this weekend? What am I doing tomorrow? So when we started on like a 35 show run, I'd be like, well, I'm just going to play this weekend, and I don't know what happens after that. So it was, you know, it was exciting. I was really excited for it, and some shows were great and some shows were fucking terrible, but that's kind of the life of it. And it was just, to me, I was so excited to be able to go out and play my music and do my thing. And so,
is there a story like early on in your career that you haven't told anybody before? Well, or at least the cameras,
the press.
I don't know. I feel like I'm generally pretty open about it. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
No, it's just one thing I've been thinking about lately is just how hard it is to like just maintain. Like, music is fucking savage. It's there are guys who have been who were really successful a couple years ago, and who are now like not doing anything, and it's just like, but they were huge 2 years ago, and like, what happened? And it's just like, well, that's just the nature of it. Like, you got to just keep growing. You got to keep doing your thing. Like, the second you are complacent, there's like 100 kids that are like fucking hungry, like the me of 2013, like trying to fucking come for your spot. And so, now with sort of a little bit of hindsight, just like seeing the guys that I kind of came up with and seeing the ones who are still doing well, and it's just like, I think there's just such a respect among people who have been like, I can't believe I've been fucking in music for like 5 years now. But even if the styles are different, even if the personalities aren't, like, even if you don't really fuck with them, like there's always like a level of sort of respect of like, game recognized game. Like, I know how hard it is, so it's kind of a cool sort of camaraderie to it now.
Yeah. Well, do you now that you have success and you're doing this and you're doing festivals, and are artists coming to you asking you to remix their stuff, or are people approaching you? Like, how does that?
Yeah.
Like, are you still remixing songs, or is it just all original stuff?
I haven't put out a remix in like 2 or 3 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. Not that I have anything against it. It's more just like I'm always working on the new original stuff, and fucking making albums takes so long, and it's like, especially with all the touring, and it's just, it's just one of those things where it's like, would I rather do a remix for someone else, like, that I may or may not really care about, or would I rather spend that time like working on my own stuff that I feel super inspired by? So yeah.
Cool. Are you working on a new record right now?
I am.
Can you give us any details on
it? The first single is called Diamond Days. We have a big tour announced coming very soon for the fall. Other than that, I can't say anything because I actually don't know anything. I have a lot of songs written. I don't know when they'll be done. I don't know what, like... It's all very nebulous right now, but I'm really excited about it, and it's just it kind of comes when it comes, but if it I'm being very ambitious creatively right now, so we'll see what it turns into.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
Oh, I was just curious because you're the second child, because I am too. What's your older sibling doing, and do they travel with you?
No, so he's a bit older, but he went to med school. He was the good child, but he had a startup, and he sold his first startup and is very successful and living in San Francisco, and on to his second startup. So now he's basically like a medical tech CEO. So still the good son.
Yeah.
You guys your parents still have bragging rights for both of you.
Yeah. My dad loves coming to shows now, which is pretty hilarious. He's like, I think, he sings, and he's in a choir. It's lit. And so now I think there's a part of him that's like a little bit jealous whenever he comes out to see me play. Like, he loves performing, he loves being like having all the attention, and so I think he sees me and he's like, he gets to live vicariously through me a little bit.
That's amazing.
So
that's so cool.
Do you have any advice for people trying to cut their teeth in the music industry right now?
Just. I really believe it's the people who make it aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the ones who just won't give up. It's my whole thing is like, you either make it or you quit. And so if you just don't quit, then but yeah, I think this was really challenging for me. Is in music there's no set path to doing anything. It's not like in any other, like if you want to be a doctor, right? You go to college, you take your science classes, you get good grades, you study for the MCAT, you get a good score on the MCAT, you apply, you go to med school, blah, 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 you go to residency, then you're a doctor.
Yeah.
Like that's how, there's a very specific set of steps to which you become a doctor. Whereas in music, there's literally no set path.
Yeah.
And if you try to copy anyone's path, it's like by the time someone does something a certain way, it's already too late. And if you try to follow it, you're too late, and it's over, right? And like, you know, the example I always use is like Kygo, right? He was like a big Trop House guy, and everyone's like, oh, Trop House is like the next fucking thing. And then he was blown up, and then everyone, like all these other guys started making Trop House, and then like by the time all like even big guys, and then when they put out their Trop House songs, no one fucking cared about Trop House anymore. And then like now Kygo's still huge.
Yeah.
But like if you tried to do what Kygo did,
all those other people,
none of them had a career. And that was, you know, that was one of the traps I fell into early on when I was like, you know, the Chainsmokers were blowing up. And so, you know, we kind of started in a similar sort of, we started on Hype Machine and, you know, big among college kids. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to do try to do the Chainsmokers did. But every time I would do like what I thought the Chainsmokers would do, it fucking bomb. And the stuff that I just like was really excited about, but like no one else had really done. And I was like, but I just was really into it. And I was like, but part of me was like, well, no one's going to care because like this stuff isn't popular. But then, you know, I was like, whatever, we'll just do it anyway. And that's the stuff that really resonates. So it's like, you can't like look for real examples on how to build your career. You just have to do what's like really authentic to you and just hope it works and know that it's going to take a really long time. You know, I like I said, I think it took me like 3 or 4 years of doing it full time after a lifetime of like making music to really feel like an artist. And you know, that I think that's pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's just like you have to be able to do it for the love of it and just really sort of trust and hone those instincts and like use that as your guiding star and not try to follow in anyone's footsteps because it just doesn't work. So
that's beautiful. That's inspiring.
Yeah, that really was.
Thank you. That was. I hope that made sense. I blacked out. I don't even know what I said.
No, that was perfect.